If you've been waiting for the Atlanta housing market to crash before buying a house, we need to talk. Because that's not exactly what's happening. But here's what's interesting. Buyers are starting to have way more leverage than they did a few years ago. Homes are sitting for longer, we're seeing price reductions, inventory has increased, and some sellers are actually willing to negotiate again. So whether you're thinking about buying or selling, or just wondering what in the world is going on with the Atlanta housing market right now, I'm gonna break it all down for you guys. So let's get into it. Hi everybody, my name is Aliana Fostering and I am a real estate agent located here in Loganville, Georgia. I do service the Metro Atlanta area. So if you do have any questions about buying or selling a home or interested in that, feel free to reach out to me. So let's get started with the video. So let's start with the biggest question. Is the Atlanta housing market crashing? Well, the short answer, no, but it is changing. And I think that's a very important distinction. So if you're waiting around thinking Atlanta homes are suddenly gonna drop 40% by next year, I probably wouldn't base my entire life plan on that. According to the Atlanta Realtors Association and their latest Metro Atlanta report, the median sales price was around $440,000 in May, and we're still seeing relatively stable home values. But at the same time, buyers aren't behaving like they did during that crazy pandemic era market. They're more selective, they're taking their time, and they're much more sensitive to the price. That's creating something that we haven't seen nearly as much of in the past few years, negotiating power. And sellers, I love you, but you can't just put any price on your home anymore and expect 12 people to fight over it by Sunday. Those days have calmed down. So the second thing, buyers have more options. This is probably one of the biggest changes that is happening in Atlanta. There's simply just more homes for the buyers to choose from than there were during the super competitive market. The latest Metro Atlanta numbers showed almost 200,000 active listings and approximately a 4 to 5 month supply of homes. For context, months of supply basically means if absolutely nobody listed another house starting tomorrow, how long would it take buyers to purchase the homes currently available? A really low number favors sellers because buyers are fighting over more limited inventory. As that number increases, the market becomes more balanced and eventually starts favoring buyers. And Atlanta has been moving in that direction. Realtor.com actually recently listed Atlanta as one of the major metros that could move into buyers market territory by the end of this summer. That's pretty significant. It doesn't mean sellers are doomed. It just means buyers can breathe again. You can actually look at a house and think about it for longer than 7 seconds, which is really nice. So the third thing, price cuts are everywhere. Here's another number I think buyers should pay attention to. In June, roughly 23% of Atlanta area listings had a price reduction. That's almost 1 out of every 4 listings. Now, important distinction, that does not mean Atlanta home values dropped 23%. Please don't clip me saying that. It means roughly 23% of the homes listed for sale had sellers reduce their asking price. And that tells us something about the buyer behavior. Buyers aren't automatically accepting whatever number a seller puts on the property. If a home is overpriced, buyers have enough alternatives to now say, yeah, no, and keep scrolling. For buyers, that creates opportunities, especially if you find a house that's been sitting on the market for a while. Maybe there's room to negotiate on the price. Maybe there's room for closing cost assistance. Maybe the seller is willing to make certain repairs. Every property is different, obviously, but this is why looking beyond just the newest listings can sometimes be a really smart strategy. So what about interest rates? Okay, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, the mortgage rates, because I know everybody wants a 3% interest rate again. I would also like a private jet and a house in Italy, but unfortunately, we have to work with the reality. Rates are still much higher than they were several years ago, and that matters because even if the purchase price of a home doesn't change, your interest rate can dramatically change the monthly payment. This is also one reason demand isn't as insane as it was before. Some potential buyers simply can't afford or aren't comfortable with payment at today's rate. But there's another side to that. Higher rates have removed some buyers from the competition. So if you're financially ready to buy now, you may have opportunities to negotiate that you wouldn't necessarily have had in an extremely competitive low rate market. And if rates eventually fall, you may potentially be able to refinance later. Obviously, there's no guarantee that rates will fall or that refinancing will make sense for everyone. So don't buy a house in today's market based entirely on the assumption that you'll refinance. your current payment still needs to make sense for you today. So, should you buy a house in Atlanta right now? This is probably where I'm gonna give you the most annoying realtor answer, and that's it depends, but seriously, it really does. It depends if you're financially stable and if you plan on staying in the home for several years and you have enough money for the down payment and the expenses that come with home ownership. There are some genuine advantages to being a buyer in this market: more inventory, more time to make decisions, more price reductions, and potentially more negotiating power. What I don't think you should do is buy a house because TikTok told you you're throwing your life away by renting. There are situations where renting makes more sense, and there are situations where buying makes more sense. Real estate should fit your life, and your life shouldn't have to fit the real estate. So I'd look at your monthly payment, how long you expect to live there, your savings, your income stability, and your long-term plans, and then I would decide. So what if you're selling? Now sellers, don't panic. People are still buying homes in Atlanta. The market hasn't disappeared, but your strategy matters way more now. The biggest mistake I would be careful about is overpricing your home because your neighbors sold theirs for some insane number 3 years ago. Today's buyers have more inventory. They have Zillow, they have Redfin, they have 47 other tabs open. They know what else is available. So if your house is $30,000 more than the comparable properties without a good reason, they're probably gonna notice. And what can happen? You sit, then you reduce the price, then buyers see the price reduction, then you sit more, and eventually you wind up negotiating the pricing anyway. Pricing correctly from the beginning can put you in a much stronger position. A well-priced, desirable home can absolutely still move quickly. We're not in a market where buyers suddenly hate houses. They're just pickier about which house gets their money because they have so many more options. So what I think happens next? Where does Atlanta go from here? Nobody, including me, has a crystal ball. And if somebody on the internet tells you they know exactly what home prices or mortgage rates will be 12 months from now, I'd be a little cautious with that. But what we can look at is the direction the current numbers are moving. Inventory has increased compared with the extremely tight markets we've experienced. Homes aren't automatically flying off the market. Price reductions are common and buyers have gained leverage. At the same time, Atlanta home prices have remained relatively resilient. So rather than some giant housing crash, what we're seeing looks much more like a market that's becoming balanced and potentially leaning more in a buyer's favor. And honestly, after the insanity we saw a few years ago, a boring, balanced real estate market might actually be a good thing. And if you're sitting on the sidelines waiting for somebody on the news to officially announce this is the day to buy your house, that's probably never coming. The right time depends much more on your finances, your goals, your local market, and just your lifestyle that you want to live. And Atlanta is huge. So what's happening in one neighborhood or suburb can be completely different than what's happening 20 or 30 minutes away. So if you are looking to buy or sell in Georgia, again, I am a resource for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. And feel free to comment any questions or video ideas that you guys want to see covered next. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.